We all know Abraham Lincoln, the tall, lanky figure in a top hat, the face on the $5 bill, the 16th president who led the nation through the Civil War and ended slavery. But behind this monumental image is a man full of contradictions, sorrows, and bizarre quirks that most history books just glance over. Today, we're diving deep into the secret life of Abraham Lincoln, the parts they don't usually teach you in school. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Lincoln was a phenomenal wrestler. Seriously. Before he was wrestling with political opponents, he was literally throwing guys to the ground. Standing at a towering 6'4", he was a local champion in his youth in New Salem, Illinois. Legend has it he only lost one match out of about 300. He wasn't just strong. He was known for his sportsmanship. In one famous bout against a local tough named Jack Armstrong, after Lincoln won, Armstrong's gang tried to jump him. Again, instead of fighting them all, Lincoln offered to take them on one by one. The display of courage so impressed Armstrong that they became lifelong friends. His reputation as a tough but fair fighter actually helped launch his political career, earning him respect and a following. Imagine a modern politician settling debates with a wrestling match. But Lincoln's physical strength masked a deep-seated emotional fragility. He suffered from what was then called melancholy, and what we would today likely diagnose as severe clinical depression. This wasn't just a case of the blues. It was a profound, lifelong struggle. His friends were often worried he might take his own life, and they would even hide knives and razors from him during his darkest episodes. He once wrote, "I am now the most miserable man living. If what I feel were equally distributed to the whole human family, there would not be one cheerful face on the earth." This profound sadness was fueled by a series of devastating personal losses. His mother, his sister, and 2 of his 4 sons all died before him. The love of his life, a young woman named Anne Rutledge, also died tragically, an event that plunged him into a deep despair he never fully recovered from. Yet paradoxically, many historians believe this deep well of sorrow gave him the profound empathy and resilience needed to lead a wounded nation through its most painful chapter. And to cope with this sadness, Lincoln developed a wicked sense of humor. He was a master storyteller and a skilled jokester, often using self-deprecating humor to disarm his opponents and win over crowds. His stories were sometimes folksy, sometimes a bit crude, but always effective. He knew that a well-timed joke could diffuse a tense situation better than any argument. Cabinet meetings would often start with him telling a funny story, much to the frustration of his more serious-minded Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, who just wanted to get down to business. But Lincoln understood the power of laughter to unite people and ease their burdens, including his own. It was his personal medicine. Now let's talk about something a little spooky. Lincoln was deeply interested in the supernatural, spiritualism, and dreams. This wasn't just a casual curiosity. It was a serious pursuit, especially after the death of his beloved 11-year-old son, Willie, in 1862. His wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, was devastated and held seances right there in the White House, trying to contact their departed son. And Lincoln himself reportedly attended some of these sessions. He wasn't necessarily a true believer, but he was open-minded and searching for comfort. More than that, he paid very close attention to his dreams, believing they were omens. He had several premonitions that came true, but the most chilling one of all occurred just a few days before his assassination. He told his wife and a few close friends about a dream he'd had. In the dream, he heard people sobbing and went downstairs in the White House to investigate. He found a coffin in the East Room, guarded by soldiers, with a crowd of mourners. When he asked a soldier who had died, the soldier replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." Lincoln was deeply unsettled by this dream, a haunting premonition of the tragedy that was to come. Here's another surprising fact. Lincoln was a tech geek for his time. He's the only U.S. president to ever hold a patent. Before his presidency, Lincoln, who had spent years on riverboats, invented a device to help boats navigate shallow waters. It was a system of inflatable bellows attached to the sides of a ship that could be filled with air to lift it over sandbars. While his invention was never commercially produced, it shows his innovative and problem-solving mind. This fascination with technology continued into his presidency. He was obsessed with the telegraph, spending hours in the War Department's telegraph office, reading dispatches from the front lines and sending his own orders directly to his generals. He saw the telegraph as the internet of his day, a tool that revolutionized communication and gave him unprecedented command over the war effort. And what about his voice? We see him in pictures as this somber, grave figure. We read his powerful, eloquent speeches. But how did he sound? Based on contemporary accounts, his voice was not what you'd expect. It wasn't the deep, booming baritone you hear from actors portraying him. Instead, his voice was described as high-pitched, reedy, and with a distinct frontier accent from his Kentucky and Indiana upbringing. When he would start speaking, people were often taken aback. But as he continued, the power of his words, the clarity of his logic, and the passion of his conviction would captivate the audience, and they would completely forget about the unusual sound of his voice. Finally, Lincoln was a huge animal lover. It might seem like a small detail, but it speaks volumes about his character. The White House during his tenure was practically a zoo. He had cats, dogs, horses, and even a couple of goats named Nanny and Nanko that his sons would sometimes hitch to a chair and ride around the presidential mansion. He was particularly fond of cats and could sit for hours with a cat on his lap, stroking it while deep in thought. He once famously fed a cat from the table during a formal White House dinner, telling his shocked wife that if the gold fork was good enough for a former president, it was good enough for the cat. This gentleness towards animals provides a striking contrast to the brutal realities of the war he was commanding. It shows a man who, despite being surrounded by death and conflict, retained a core of compassion and tenderness. So, from a champion wrestler and a patent-holding inventor to a grieving father, exploring the supernatural, and a witty storyteller, fighting off crippling depression, the real Abraham Lincoln was far more complex, flawed, and fascinatingly human than the marble statue he's often made out to be. These hidden stories don't diminish his greatness, they enhance it. They show us that true strength isn't about being perfect or unbreakable. It's about enduring immense pain, embracing your quirks, and finding the humanity in yourself and others, even in the darkest of times. Thanks so much for watching. If you found these stories as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments which Lincoln facts surprised you the most. See you in the next one.